All right. So today we're just going to review our meeting minutes and agendas topic that you all were taking notes on about 2 weeks ago. So I've got here meeting minutes versus meeting agendas. Here are some notes that I was able to gather through my research. So I want to hear if there's anything else that you all have in addition to these. So meeting agenda, the definition hopefully that you have on your notes or something similar, is a list of items that a participant hopes to accomplish at a meeting. So participants being the meeting facilitator and anyone attending the meeting, anything that they hope to accomplish in that time span is what's going to be on the meeting agenda. Did you all get that in your notes? And then in comparison, the meeting minutes are detailed notes that serve as an official written record of a meeting or a conference. A conference in this case, not necessarily meaning like an actual official conference, but a conference is just another word for an official meeting. So they serve as an official written record. That way it's very clear who was at that meeting and who was the facilitator, who covered what different topics, what were the action items that were shared, and who decided that they were going to own those action items. That way they have that as documentation. So when somebody says, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do something, they can refer back to the meeting minutes and say, well, we agreed last week in the meeting, and you mentioned that you were comfortable completing that task. So has something changed? Also here, it should be distributed. The meeting agenda should be distributed in advance of the meeting so that participants have the opportunity to prepare for that meeting. For example, today I have a meeting planned with my manager and my academic team members. And my manager sent us the agenda in advance, and it had an item on there that is asking us to sign up for this website, which is like a teaching tool. She wants us to sign up for that website before the meeting so we can play around in that website and learn that tool in advance, sign up in advance of the meeting so that the meeting doesn't include a bunch of people trying to log in and it not working. So that's something that's a benefit of sending a meeting agenda in advance, letting people know, hey, heads up, here's what we're going to cover. Here's any work you need to do in advance of the meeting. Another thing about, in comparison to a meeting agenda, which is sent before the meeting, typically I would say the meeting agendas that I've seen have either been sent 24 hours in advance of the meeting, like the day before. If you have a Friday morning meeting, then aim to send it by the afternoon or close of business on Thursday. That way someone can see it on Thursday afternoon or even on Friday morning when they first come into work. The second one here is meeting minutes should be sent to all attendees within 24 hours or 1 business day of the meeting, and since it has adjourned, since the meeting ended. So this is kind of a rule of thumb to remind everyone what was covered in the meeting, remind them of their action items before the next occurrence. And when it says here within 24 hours, for those days where you do have a Friday meeting, you're not expected to work on a Saturday to send that meeting, the meeting minutes on a Saturday, but instead you could send it on Monday, which would be the next business day. I've got a few more notes here, and then I want to hear what you all put. So the meeting agenda is typically created by the meeting facilitator, whoever essentially is hosting the meeting. So in a lot of cases at your internship, that's probably going to be your internship manager, either hosting a meeting for your team or maybe a project manager hosting a meeting for a project that you're working on at your internship. It could be you as well. You could be the meeting facilitator, for example, in a one-on-one meeting with your manager. So what I would recommend is that if you have a weekly one-on-one scheduled with your manager, to send that kind of status report that we covered, was it last week? Send a status report and a sample agenda before your meeting with them, and then that could cover, here's the things that I want to talk about in this meeting. And on the flip side, meeting minutes, the meeting facilitator typically designates a note taker. So the meeting facilitator is the person who's running through the meeting, keeping everyone on task, making sure that you go through all the agenda items. It's a lot to ask for that person to be the note taker as well. So instead, usually they designate whether they ask for someone to volunteer as a note taker or have a rotational type note taker, where if you have 4 members in your team, you automatically know that every first meeting of the month is yours. The second meeting of the month is your colleagues, and so forth. So you could either be designated or just automatically volunteer to be the note taker every time if that is a strength that you have. And it's the note taker's task to take a record of the meeting and send that to all attendees. Going back to the agenda agendas help keep the meeting on target with content and with timing. It's really crucial that you make sure that your meeting stays within the time limit. Most meetings, I would say, are, have a destined time limit, whether either be a half an hour or an hour or 2 hours. But you need to respect other people's times and their calendars. And so you don't want your meeting to go over on time, because usually that means it's cutting into their lunch break or it's cutting into a different meeting that they have. And so in order to respect time, what you would want to do is keep your agenda kind of high level, a little bit detailed here and there if there's reminders that you want to share as a facilitator. But another great thing to do as a facilitator is to actually ask for someone to be a timekeeper and remind us when it's 5 minutes before the meeting is over. That way you can come back on topic and get to the last minute details. And the minutes here serve as a log of what occurred during the meeting and noted action items. So I mentioned this just a few minutes ago about it kind of serves as like a legal record of what happened in this meeting. In some states, you're not allowed to record without people's consent. So instead, the idea that somebody is taking note of something is a way for them to not necessarily record your voice, but rather record what is mentioned. So, Sam mentioned this idea for a project, or Susan volunteered to take this part of the task for next week's event, those kind of things. So having noted action items is really key on your meeting minutes, and that way everyone, when you send it out to them, they can be reminded of what they signed up to do or what they were asked or voluntold to accomplish. Does anyone have anything else to add to these? Looking at your notes.
I mentioned that in the meeting minutes, that it also includes like what was decided. So if there was like a poll.
Yes, definitely. So if there was some sort of poll or a decision that was made during the meeting, the minutes would then highlight that, just to confirm that everyone reached that decision. All right, any other thoughts or contributions? All right. So just some little fun fact here. And why are they called meeting minutes? Well, in fact, it actually here has nothing to do with time, but rather the word minute, meaning small. So in this sense, it means small notes from Latin. And so it's kind of referencing that you're condensing down something that's large. You're not expected to write down every single person's every word spoken. So instead, it's kind of a condensed, more concise version of what occurred and what was said during the meeting. A little infographic here, how to keep meeting minutes. So make sure you know who everyone is. One of the aspects of the minutes is to note the attendees of the meeting and also note who's absent from the meeting. The reason for this is that you need to know who was there, but also who missed out on key information that was shared during that meeting. So if you're able to note, okay, these people were absent, regardless of what the reason was, they aren't going to be held to the same standards and accountability to know the material that was covered in that meeting. So in that case, the manager then needs to follow up with them and say, hey, I know you missed our meeting. Here's what we covered, or here's what we decided on. Here's what I'm going to need you to do as part of, as your task in this project. So make sure you know who everyone is. Ensure the tool that you're working at, ensure your tool of choice is in working order and keep a backup tool on hand. So what this means is that some people actually have a tool, whether it be their computer itself and some sort of digital log for their meeting minutes, which is really great. I highly recommend that. It's the easiest way for you to send people the notes. Otherwise, you're going to have to handwrite your notes and then either take a what's it called? Can scan, take a picture and email to them, or retype all of those notes. Everyone has a different style of doing it, but I recommend taking digital notes in the first place. It'll be the easiest thing. But even in this case, your pen or pencil is considered a tool. And if your pen runs out of ink and you're not in a place where you have a secondary option, then you won't be able to continue taking those notes. So just make sure that you've got some backups planned. So here it says, write down all motions, who made them, and the results of those votes. In some more formal meeting settings, somebody might make a motion. And basically a motion is, I have this idea that I want to share, and I think that we should implement this, but I need other people to officially agree to it. So I motion that we end Fridays at 2 p.m. And then other people would say, I second that motion, I third that motion. And then it goes back to the initial person who then writes the official motion, and everyone is in agreement. So some businesses do use that kind of terminology. Others, I would say probably a bit more modern, more casual, to say, hey, I think that we should get off work Friday at 2 p.m. What do you all think? And they say, yeah, I agree. Same kind of idea, just less formal wording. Here it says, type up the minutes as soon as possible after the meeting while everything is fresh in your mind. So again, if you are taking written notes, to do it as soon as possible so you're not forgetting key details. A lot of this will be a little bit easier to understand when you go into your internships and you're able to witness how people take notes. You can even ask your manager, what is your preferred note-taking template or style? Is there a designated note taker? Will I be expected to be a note taker at some point? You'll be able to talk out those conversations in your first few weeks of your internship. So I think that every workplace has their own style. Every manager has their own style of what they would like. There are some meetings where they're so casual that we don't actually have a note taker, that everyone is expected to write down their own action items and kind of remember what was covered in that meeting. Other meetings I've been involved with do have very formal note takers assigned every week. So it really depends on the facilitator. So these are some of the best practices in order to maintain organization and also not forget key things. So I wanted to show you all some templates. If you remember when we covered org charts, there's this really great resource here. I recommend that you bookmark this. I know I taught you all how to do bookmarks. So Template Lab, let me just put this in the chat box so you have it available. But this specifically is for meeting minutes and meeting notes templates. So I think I put this in Schoology as well. But Template Lab, if I click here, they have a bunch of templates for a lot of different things, whether it be personal, legal, real estate. You can go on and easily download these and fit them to your own needs. So it looks here, startup budget. So if you're creating a startup business and you want a sample budget, you can go there and create that. Looks like these are all like kind of business or legal, a stock certificate. If I click personal, I'm assuming there's some resumes, conference sign-up sheet. So this website is something that you can use and take advantage of at your internship. Oh, and there's some sample flyers. So going back, we're looking at, the meeting minutes and meeting notes templates that are provided on Template Lab. This has a lot of great notes as well about why we use meeting minutes and why we use agendas. Just waiting for it to load. So you can see here, here are some of the contents, how to effectively write them, some formal meeting and basic meeting templates. But as you scroll down, again, this is very similar to the org chart one, where you just keep scrolling and find one that visually stands out to you or that you think would be relevant to your company. So this one's a committee, this one's student support meeting. Maybe those ones aren't as relevant for you all. But instead, if we scroll down here, like this one, you would be able to insert your company logo up here at the top in the header. This would download, by the way, to Microsoft Documents. I believe you could also download it to Google Docs. Or if they don't have a direct option for you to download into Google Docs, you could download it into Microsoft Word and then upload into Google Docs. So there's some alternatives. So meeting agenda, very plain and simple. What is the meeting or the project name? It could be a one-time meeting, to make sure that that's very clear, or it could just be a weekly team check-in. Date of the meeting, who's the facilitator, what's the time this is happening, and the location is key. So in this case, as you are virtual, you'll probably want to put the Zoom link or whatever web conferencing site accessible information, whether it be the meeting ID and password or the link to that Zoom. You're going to want to put that in location. Once we're back to in-person, you would put the conference room location or the building that it's in. So just a little variation on that for virtual. The meeting objective here is simply, why is this meeting being held? Think of it like a quick, maybe 2-sentence, 3-sentence small paragraph of why is this meeting important? What is going to be covered in this meeting? You could mention the attendees, the department or division they're from, their contact information. Some of this is relevant, some of it may not be. So this would probably be beneficial if you have a lot of external stakeholders attending this meeting, or it'd be helpful to have their contact information on hand. However, if all the people work in the same team, same department, in the same company, you probably don't need to have their contact information as such on a meeting agenda. You'll have some of the key topics. You could have the owner of the topic. For example, the facilitator is the one hosting the meeting, but maybe they're not the owner of a certain event that's coming up. Instead, Sally is the owner of that. So the meeting facilitator would let Sally know, hey, heads up, I've slotted out 5 minutes for you to remind everyone about the picnic and, you know, give them the potluck sign-up list. So that way, when it comes time, Sally knows she's got 5 minutes to cover that topic. Other preparation, so here, if there's any kind of documentation, a website that people are going to need to go to, it's helpful to have that information accessible for them. Again, I shared with you about how my manager for a meeting I have today put in links in her agenda and said, before the meeting, please go to this link and create a login. So that's really helpful. Instead of just having go to this website without a link, it's a lot easier for me to click the link. So this is one version, and then of course you can put your name. So a lot are very similar to that. Here's another one. I'll show you one reason I like this one, because it already has the parking lot built in. If you all remember back to, I think, the very first week of BC, in week 2, we covered the term parking lot and about what that is. Any items that will be deferred for later discussion. So put them in the parking lot and actually have a parking lot on your meeting minutes. So this is different from an agenda. The one I just showed you was an agenda. This one is the meeting minutes of what's happening during the meeting. So going back at the top, you would have the project name or the meeting name at the top. Maybe it's the department or the company, program area, meeting purpose. Some of these might not necessarily be needed, or you can adjust. So when it says attendees, you could also put absent, you know, people who are not there or not present at the meeting. Next steps, who is assigned what, who's the owner, and what's the due date. Decisions that are made, what happened, why did it happen, what are the impacts. some general discussion items or knowledge that was shared. Maybe if you share a resource, then that would be going into this box, and any miscellaneous items. This is just one version of a meeting minutes template. There's a lot, so it's up to you, and eventually you'll figure out what you like the best, what works for you in organization sense. But again, your manager or your people at your internship might already have a designated template that they've been using for 3 years, and they have a consistent place that they upload all the meetings to. Just to let you know, my manager has all of our meeting agendas and takes meeting minutes right next to the meeting agenda in an Excel sheet. And so each new meeting has a tab on or basically on the whole worksheet, it has a new sheet at the bottom. So a tab that's easy to click. So that way we can easily just refer back to last week's meeting or even a month ago's meeting. And then also she can just add a new tab, new sheet. I'm learning Excel now, so I'm getting used to the language. It's not a tab, it's a sheet. And there's a few more down here you can take a look at. So although there isn't going to be a specific deliverable around you all creating a sample template or agenda, I think this could help come into play at your internship. So I would recommend to keep track of this website, and you'll probably want to come back here soon. All right, would anyone like to contribute or share any examples of meeting minutes or agendas that they've created in the past?
Do you want us to share what we made for the deliverable?
I was just curious if you've ever, if any of you, were any of you project leads for the Mod 2 project? Because you might have made an agenda for that kind of thing. I'm going to